one of the homies had went and got that from his cousin, and when he came back with the gangster stuff, and we started saying it. We started saying Menlo Gangsters. Started sounding real good. You know what I mean? That's how we was. That's how we was rolling at that time. You know what I mean? But it still wasn't no connection to the gangsters because we were still fighting against them. You know what I mean? So we didn't have no connection really with nobody but Menlo's, you know what I mean, as our own strength. In 85, it's like the 60s came and was like living with us. You know what I mean? They basically moved in our apartments with us, and we was living together in 85. You know what I mean? And we used to sleep and wake up together with 6 O's and different neighborhood people, you know what I mean? And then we was, with the 40s in our early years, you know what I mean? Really just with the with the 40s when they first was like coming out and the 6 O's.
So who was some of the main 60s staying in them apartments or coming over here fucking with y'all?
Oh man, it was
Peter Wack.
Petey Wack, yeah, Big Petey Wack,
Little Petey Wack,
Cal Dog, man, it was so many.
Shit.
All of them, man,
Shit.
All the early years, them dudes was there. Keystone. Keystone played a big part in who we is around here. You know what I mean? Petey Wack, he played a big part. You know what I mean? Being around here. You know what I mean? Because we didn't know how to gang bang. You know what I mean? We was learning. You know what I mean? We wasn't gang members, but we did it. But we didn't know the gang banging culture. That wasn't us. But we.
So let me ask you: when you was in school, what gangs went to school with you guys?
Man, look, man, we was nobodies when we was in school. You know what I mean? We was 2 or 3 but it was the Hoovers. When I went to school, it was the Hoovers. I mean, elementary. When we was in elementary, well, let me just say this. Before that, my brother and them and me, when I was coming up as a kid, my brother and them was in hoods, and they had that over here. So, as a kid, my brother and them wasn't, it wasn't all that real rowdy fighting like it is now today to be a gangbanger against another gangbanger. But I grew up, claiming in-hood up under my brother and them, and they wasn't messing with the Hoovers then when I was a little boy from 10 years old. But when I was going to school, everybody was Hoovers. All the little kids used to say Hoover. You know what I mean? Then we went to John Muir. Then it was the mixture with the 6 Deuce Brims and Hoovers. You know what I mean? And, but the Brims was my partners. I mean, them was the guys that I hung with, you know what I mean? In my early years, never had no problems with them, coming through school, you know what I mean? I got fair fights, everything, you know what I mean? Messing with my Brim friends, you know what I mean? I just had it equal without even having all the dudes, you know what I mean?
So being over here since 1963, was it ever a time where Brims came on this side of Gage?
Oh man, look, wait a minute. Brims used to have...
Oh, wow.
Look, when I was coming up, the Brims used to have all this. All our area used to be the Brims when I was a little boy. My brother used to be from Brims, you know what I mean? And all that, so, and...
They was the businessmen with the hats and all that. The Brims had Stacey Adams and all the nice clothes and stuff. Oh, they was popping. They was popping all through everything. They was doing their thing.
Let him get it. We'll get to you.
Come a little closer. Yeah. The Brims had all this. All this was the Brims. I didn't watch this switch over and over, and then when I was a little kid, it was the Slausons. My brothers and them was involved in the Slausons. But back then stuff was changing in a year. The whole scene had changed. 6 months, it'll be something else. You know what I mean? Back then it was just happening like that. So like as I was coming up as a little boy, we had the Slausons. My brother was from the Slausons, and all the Slausons used to party at our house. And the one name that I never forget, and they used to always say he was the leader of the Slausons when he was at our house, and they called him Skillet. And him and his sister lived directly across the street from 68th Street School. You know what I mean? I used to go over there and see them, and they knew me as a little boy. You know what I mean? So, just the gang culture over here, we was just born and raised in it, but it wasn't as bad as when we actually got it in our hands.
Right.
You know what I mean? But, yeah, this used to be the Slausons, as I remember. Then all the Bloods was all over here, and then that switched up. Then most naturally the Hoovers just been the Hoovers been a gang ever since I can remember as a kid. Like just the Hoover Connect. They always had, they always had a hand in all this down here, and. Yeah, this just switched up so many different times.
So do you remember what year the Brims really started getting pushed up out of the south side of Gage?
Well, it wasn't really like they got pushed up outside, because they kind of like floated to that area. They just kind of like left our area. It wasn't no
just by default.
Yeah, it wasn't no fight, or they didn't have no challenge.
Right.
If they would have stayed, they would have stayed. But they kind of like floated off,
okay.
and just started being more toward Harvard Park and stuff like that, and being toward that side.
Oh, that's good shit. Do you know the founders of Menlo?
Yeah.
Give me a roll call.
Well, look. The thing about founders then is like. Everybody that was over here ended up being a founder because we was named Menlo.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't nobody that stepped up and said, we gonna be Menlo and we all line up and we Menlos. No. All of us is founders at that, and a lot of and when you want to say that, a lot of founders from Menlo is from Hoover. And you know what I mean? When you go to that, we got a lot of early age guys. You know what I mean? We got Gangster Man. You know what I mean? He's one of the founders. You know what I mean? One of the first guys. You know what I mean? We got E, his brother. You know what I mean? He's one of the first guys. Me myself, was one of the first guys. We got Slim over here. He was one of the first guys that was around. We got Capone. We got Mud. You know what I mean? That was one of the first guys, along with some of his family members that turned Hoover. You understand what I'm saying? It's just and it's just a lot of guys. But this the main guys that I can think of right now. And if you can come up with some more guys, Tim,
I don't need to come up. I can name a lot of them. But the thing is, I can name a lot of them. I just can't think. I can't.
Yeah, that's how I beat you.
But
it's all good.
Yeah. But those are some of the the main guys that stood the time. You know what I mean? And at the early age of Menlo. It was really three guys. It was Gangster Ran, E, his brother, and me. Before we was a group. And I had a cousin named I got a cousin named Gardell, and we was the first real group. No, they wasn't in the group yet. Wolf is a kid. He came later. But I'm talking about. No, he wasn't. I'm talking about the first group we had that we would fight for each other, because the Hoovers used to come over here, and they, in the early times, we'll all be over there on 68. They'll come over here. We're not gangbangers, but we all friends. They'll come over here and beat up one guy, but it didn't have nothing to do with us. So they just let him beat him up. But you know, now they are homies, but back then they just beat up individual guys. You know what I mean? And nobody won't get involved. But in the early age, it was me, Gangster, E, and Gardell. We was all together. If you would have touched one of us, all four of us was fighting together in them early years. You know what I mean? Before anybody else was really fighting together. You know what I mean? So we was kind of the real core of you know, somebody getting together.